Hey, welcome back. It's hour two of a Thirsty Thursday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John Tobacco. We're coming in live every day from noon to 2 Eastern from the Newsmax headquarters in New York City. We are high atop Midtown Manhattan. And before we kick off a powerful hour two, Seth Denson is going to join us in just a few minutes from GDP Advisors to talk about his book on healthcare. But let's go down to the New York Stock Exchange, where it's quite the healthy day there, too, with the Dow up right now as we speak 420 points. It was up just about 500 a little earlier. It's been a little pullback here just around lunchtime, but still well in the green, just under 27,000. We were establishing a nice support level at 27 just about a month ago. The trade war and tariff fears knocked the market around a bit. But it seems like things are coming back now with the end of the summer, and things are coming back in hour two when Seth Denson joins us. Seth, thanks for joining us on Liquid Lunch. You're chief strategist and co-founder at GDP Advisors. Your book, The Cure, A Blueprint for Solving America's Healthcare Crisis, is out. You brought us a copy. I went through some of the notes. That Frankie does all my advance work for me. He gave me a breakdown of each chapter of the book. I'm interested to hear about the referee one. But give us a little overview on why you wrote The Cure, and then let's try to get into some of the particulars about it.
Thanks for asking. Yeah, so I've been in the healthcare business, specifically on the insurance side of things, for nearly 20 years. About 10 years into my career, I had what my colleagues call my Jerry Maguire moment, where I started really looking at what we were doing in healthcare now. Mind you, this is right as the Affordable Care Act passed, and realized that we were really just perpetuating a not-so-great system, but we were getting paid handsomely to do it. And so in that epiphany-like moment, I decided that I would sit down and really write a business plan for how we could change healthcare in a way that could continue to be sustained by our free market system without government overreach and control, but benefit the consumer. And so I wrote a business plan. We started applying it at GDP Advisors within our own clients' portfolios. We started seeing their costs go down, and everything was working. So that led to me writing a white paper on what we did back in 2016, which then led to me doing a TED Talk, and then finally the book.
Well, fantastic. And, you know, people, I don't think anyone is educated enough on healthcare. I just want to give you like one of my own personal observations that just happened. I was on a COBRA plan from my former employer, and it was up, right? And it was a Cigna plan. So it was a national plan. Now, my new company is based here in New York, so I wasn't even eligible to get Cigna because I have less than 100 employees. So now I had to go to Empire or one of these other ones in New York, and I actually, even myself, have been in the markets for years. I had to call my doctor. I called Dr. Frank. Doc, what should I get? You know what I mean? What's the best one? What do you take? Does this give people at least a roadmap to know what they need to do for themselves? I know there's a lot of, political theory in this that we'll get to, but does this give people a little bit of a roadmap?
It does. The final chapter is where I really address the consumer and say, listen, at the end of the day, in our free market system, the consumer has the power. Unfortunately, when it comes to healthcare, though, we just yield that power. We don't utilize it effectively. The average American citizen spends 10 hours researching a car before making a purchase, 2 hours researching a flat screen TV, and 15 minutes on healthcare decisions. We just blindly trust people in white lab coats. And so if we really want to start to move the needle in healthcare, we've got to take control of that. And I talk about that in the final chapter of the book.
Frankie, you're going to be facing a healthcare crisis because you're going to have to get on a family plan now with your marriage coming.
Well, so
it's going to go up.
I have followed healthcare policy for a long time because my father made his living in health insurance for about 30 years, and he would always bring home these discussions to the kitchen table and would encourage us to think about different ways of healthcare financing and healthcare policy. So I found the book absolutely fascinating, in part because of what you alluded to with John, is that we always hear people say, this is my plan for healthcare, this is your plan for healthcare, but your book actually points out the important role that patients and consumers should be playing in any sort of a new system. So we so often usually like an approach where vote for X or vote for Y, and that'll take care of everything. That's why the chapter that I found the most fascinating in your book was chapter 3, where the solutions lie, right? So let's talk about some of the solutions that have been put forward by policymakers. One that has gotten a great deal of attention this election cycle is a single-payer plan. Health care for all, Medicare for all, and explain to folks why maybe that's not the best approach. To people that are underinsured or have no health insurance, sounds pretty good. What's wrong with it?
Well, let's just start with what it's called originally, right? Medicare for all. It's not Medicare at all. What has been proposed by Senator Sanders and some of the Democrats that are running is single payer, government controlled, government run healthcare. Medicare, as it's structured, actually utilizes the private pay system. It utilizes the traditional health insurance market, allows for freedom of choice, allows people to choose doctors. But what's being proposed won't do that. So when you hear Medicare for all, that's marketing over mechanics. The second piece, and I'm a realist, I'm an economist, and when you start to look at data, you realize that a Medicare for all that's been proposed is $3.4 trillion by most estimates. Our current revenues of the federal government under tax law, $3.4 trillion. We would quite literally need to double the tax revenues just to pay for this monstrosity that, quite frankly, when you start to poll Americans and realize that they won't have freedom of choice of doctors, they won't get to choose their own plans, it is going to be dictated to them what type of health care they will receive, and it will be rationed. That's the only way to control the costs. Americans, by and large, do not want it.
So what do we do for the 11 million or so Americans that have no health insurance, and if they get into an accident or they catch a bad break in terms of a disease, they're facing bankruptcy? What do we do to those folks?
Well, we need to make the insurance system more understandable. And I think, again, I would be careful. I was not a fan of the Affordable Care Act, but there were a couple of key components that made sense. The problem was when you have two components that make sense and 98 that don't, it doesn't work. Right? So, making insurance affordable is the key. But to do that, you have to look at the entire economic system of healthcare. The problem with the Affordable Care Act was that it tried to drive down health insurance premiums. Well, if you don't drive down health insurance costs, that's like me saying I'm going to give you a better interest rate on your credit card, but I'm not going to address your spending habits. So we need to address the spending habits of healthcare and drive down those costs. Then health insurance premiums will go down. We need to allow for competition in the insurance space. Insurance is still regulated by the states. We need to allow insurance to be competitive across state lines. We need to open up that marketplace. We need to eliminate insurance networks. There's this opaque structure called insurance networks. You dealt with it with Cigna, right? Where no, that's not available in New York. Why? Insurance should just be covering your liabilities, not based on a specific network. Everybody's in network with anybody anymore, so all networks do is provide protectionism for the healthcare delivery system.
So one of the more controversial aspects of Obamacare was the fact that you were mandated to buy health insurance or face a penalty. Is that something that you're on board with, forcing people to buy health insurance, or no?
No, I'm a free market capitalist. I don't think we should force people to buy anything. But we also shouldn't bail them out when they make the choice not to do that either, right? So there is some self-responsibility in this. We should make it accessible to everybody, make it affordable by driving costs down, allowing people to pick and choose what they want. But if they ultimately choose not to do that, then that's on them, not on us, the taxpayers.
The one chapter where you talk about the government being a referee, right? Right here in New York, we used to have this thing called OTB, off-track betting, where you can go in and bet on horse races. And it was administered by the state government. They ran these off-track betting. And it's the only gambling operation I think ever run that lost money, right? You can't really lose. But the government didn't go down there and call the photo finish, right? They weren't refereeing the races. They were administering this program, and they actually bankrupted the program when the mob's been running gambling for years at a very great profit, but the government actually ran it into the ground. You talk about how we need the government to be the referee, meaning like just, I guess, make sure it's fair.
That's right.
But we don't want the government running it. It seems like everything they run is a disaster.
Nobody wants to go to the VA for their health care for everybody in America, right? That's a very perfect example of why we don't want government in the business of running health care. That being said, what we do need the government for is to set the ground rules and to make sure that all the parties are playing appropriately. That's what free market is, right? We have antitrust laws for a reason. Antitrust laws are really being thrown out right now in healthcare. We're seeing massive consolidation across multiple sectors of healthcare. Healthcare is actually broken out into multiple areas of what we call supply chain. inpatient hospitalization, physician services, prescription drugs, medical devices. These are all parts of the supply chain. We talk a lot about collusion right now in the United States.
Yeah.
You want to talk about collusion? Look at healthcare. You got insurance companies owning the prescription drug distribution, in bed with the hospital systems, and we, the taxpayers, are paying the bill. And so what we need the government to do is step up and govern that and say, hey, listen, we're not going to allow for this to happen. Here are the playing rules. Let the free market work. In the United States, consumers do not have information before they make purchasing decisions, right? You go get something done. 3 months later, you get a bill in the mail and you go, what the heck was that?
Right.
I didn't even know I had all that stuff done. Who are those people that saw me? What was in network? What was out of network? And now I owe it because I signed a 80-page terms and conditions when I went in to get the treatment. We need to stop that. I should know what it's going to cost me before I have services rendered so that I can be a consumer and make the right decision. That's what the government should step in and do, is make sure that all those pieces are working appropriately so that the consumer can drive the market, which it does in everything else, right? We pick which city sports teams reside, we pick which flavors of Ben & Jerry's ice cream come out, right? And stay on the show, right? We could fix healthcare if we had the information to do it.
And we need a fix, that's for sure. We talked about with John Cummings, who's a candidate for Congress, former NYPD officer. The left has relied on union support for years, and now you have everybody on the left talking about single payer and stuff. And many of the unions, especially here in New York, they've negotiated. They got like less pay cut, a lower pay raise to get a better private plan. And I don't know if these unions are going to be behind these people who want to go to single payer when they realize that their great plan that they negotiated for is now going to be some ration plan administered by the government.
No, that's exactly right. Matter of fact, the unions have been opposed to the Affordable Care Act since it came out, right? There was a component of the Affordable Care Act called the Cadillac tax, where effectively, and let's think about the rationale behind this, right? The Affordable Care Act wanted to make plans better. But if you had too good of a plan, we're going to tax you for it. And so the unions went ballistic over this and since then, Democrats have tried to walk that back. That was the whole line from Nancy Pelosi, we have to pass this thing to find out what's in it. Well, they passed it, they found out what was in it, and the unions didn't like it so much.
All right, well, if you're looking for all the information on transparency, free markets, and The Cure, go out and find the book, The Cure. Thank you for filling us in on all this stuff that's going on with healthcare. You're watching Liquid Lunch. We'll be back right after this.